Character deaths are a totally normal concept in horror movies. A large part of the scare factor comes from the fear of death itself, and seeing grisly murders on screen is pretty much the entire appeal of slasher or home invasion movies. So it comes as no surprise that we do expect to see death at almost every twist and turn in these movies, and we get what we expect. Most of the time. That's because even though we're braced for the worst, every so often audiences can't help but gasp at the death of a certain character. Whether they be a fan favorite, the protagonist, or maybe even just a character that you identify with strongly for one reason or another, there are always some deaths that simply nobody could predict. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 8 unexpected deaths in horror movies. Number 8. Annie, Hereditary. Ari Aster's 2018 feature film debut Hereditary added more fuel to the elevated horror genre, and helped other movies such as The Witch, The Lighthouse, and Get Out all define what seems to be the current in style of horror movies. In this slow-burning pagan horror, we follow the Graham family, who are grieving the loss of their elusive matriarch. After a considerable amount of tension with seemingly no end to its growing, the death of a main character spells trouble for the remaining family members. Mother Annie struggles to cope with the loss of her daughter Charlie, which creates a divide between herself, her son, and her husband. Given the trajectory of the film, it did make sense for Annie to die, but it still didn't reduce the shock at all when we actually saw it happen. After losing her husband in addition to her daughter, Annie is then possessed by a demon central to the plot of the movie, and roughly 5 minutes after this occurs, the mother cuts off her own head with a piano wire. Number 7. Elliot, the Bye-Bye Man. A very bad film that leaves absolutely nothing to the imagination other than the entire plot, which you essentially have to make up for yourself as it makes no sense whatsoever. The 2017 Stacey titled supernatural horror The Bye-Bye Man does provide an unexpected death of a main character. The premise centers on Elliot, John, and Sasha, a group of college friends who move into an old house together. After moving in, it becomes quickly apparent that things are not quite right. Sasha develops a mystery illness, and Elliot and John begin experiencing disturbing hallucinations. The supernatural entity who seems to be the cause of these strange happenings is referred to only as the Bye-Bye Man, and the only understanding we gain of him is that you can't say his name without summoning him, but it literally is never revealed who or what the real villain is. By the end of the film, most of the characters have been driven to insanity, which unfortunately ends with Sasha being shot by Elliot himself before turning the gun on his own head. This is a twist that the audience doesn't believe will actually be carried out until you hear the gunshot for yourself. In a way, it makes the film better by killing off the main character and showing that he doesn't want the Bye-Bye Man's terror to continue. But unfortunately, there is a sequel tease within the last few minutes, which immediately undoes the bold move to kill off Elliot and ruins a bittersweet moment of admiration. Number 6. John Kramer and Amanda, Saw 3. Now, this may have seemed like an obvious death to some, as John was clearly the antagonist of the franchise, and therefore most viewers probably wanted him dead. However, there are audience members everywhere that are still truly baffled by John Kramer's death, and even had hoped at a fake your own death number from the 2017 addition to the franchise, Jigsaw. Alas, this was not the case, and John Kramer remained just as dead as he was at the end of Saw 3. For those of you unfamiliar with this franchise, John Kramer is an empathetic yet albeit unhinged villain who entraps his victims in various situations and gives them an ultimatum in order to escape. His backstory becomes more intricate as the franchise continues, which only adds to the confusion of his death in the 3rd installment. The main confusion surrounding Jigsaw's death came from the unwillingness from audience members to believe that the film creators may actually have killed off the main guy. Sure, he was always technically sentenced to death given that he had a terminal illness, but to see his throat cut open in the 3rd installment was still a massive shock. Many believe that there had to be some kind of twist incoming, especially when Apprentice Amanda was similarly killed in the same scene. Where would we go from here? Whether or not you like the plotline surrounding Kramer's death, there's no denying that an element of it seemed to baffle and take many viewers by complete surprise. Number 5. Immigr, The Platform. A social science fiction horror like no other, this 2019 Spanish film, The Platform, both shocked and thrilled audiences with its concept and general defiance of regular horror tropes. The fear in this fantastic film comes from a very primitive need: food, or rather, the lack thereof. The protagonist, Goreng, awakes in a confined concrete cell with another man, Trimagasi. We soon discover they're part of a linear system of floors that are provided food via the same platform every day. However, there's a catch. The platform begins on the top floor with a full spread of mouth-watering food, and in theory, enough to feed all the floors. As human greed would have it though, the platform barely makes it down 20 floors before there's almost nothing left. The cellmates are rotated every 30 days, meaning that you could spend 30 days on floor 1, the top floor, and then as soon as day 31 hits, you could be transported down to the 115th floor, and so on. When Goreng is moved to floor 33, he befriends his new cellmate Immigr. Immigr is a worker of the establishment that created the system they both find themselves in, and she explains how she wanted to enter the system to see if she could try and change it. After spending a month together and after the brutal killing of Immigur's dog within the cell that seems to cause her irreparable damage, the two find themselves on floor 202. Earlier within the film, we'd seen Immigr state that there are no more than 200 floors in the system. When Goreng awakes, he tragically finds that Immigr has hanged herself. It's unexpected and heartbreaking, but does allow for our main protagonist to live on through the next leg of the film. Number 4. Simon and Kate, Fear Street, 1994. Fear Street 1994 is a series of movies based on a trilogy of books of the same name and follows a group of teens trying to solve a string of murders. You can't help but immediately fall in love with the likable characters that are Kate and Simon, as they appeal to the inner teenager in all of us. Only in the third act do the characters really understand the supernatural entity at the heart of these murders, and that any attempt to stop it at this point would be futile. I was personally really unhappy with these deaths when I saw them happen, so I'm very glad that the author of this article, Amy James, chose to include it. Simon and Kate's deaths come at the climax of the movie, almost leaving the audience more shocked than they would have been if it had come at any other time. Simon is tragically murdered by one of the many serial killers brought back to life by Sarah Fire's curse, with an axe planted firmly in his head. The brutality of both deaths is a significant contributing factor to their unexpectedness, as you find yourself asking, no way are they really gonna kill her off by putting her head through a bread slicer? And the answer to that question is in fact, yes. Yes, they are. Thankfully though, both characters receive a really emotional and lovely send-off at the end of the movie, so at least we got to process our pain. Number 3, Arthur and Joseph, The Woman in Black. This 2012 adaptation of Susan Hill's 1983 novel with the same name, Daniel Radcliffe stars as Arthur Kipps, a solicitor who's sent to Eel Marsh House to deal with the documents of its recently deceased owner. Anyone familiar with Hill's novel would be correct to expect thrills and chills galore, and this second film adaptation does not disappoint. Arthur navigates his way through Eel Marsh House's secretive past that is filled with the unexplained deaths of the villagers' children. Slowly untangling the web of confusion, Arthur discovers the root of these unfortunate deaths, and soon realizes that his own young son will be the woman's next victim. Trying to rectify the wrong that was done to Jeanette, the woman, Arthur attempts to pacify her by finding the body of her own young son who perished in the marsh surrounding the house years earlier. Thinking that the trick worked and the woman will no longer continue her reign of terror, he meets his young son Joseph and the nanny at the train station this same day. While momentarily distracted, Joseph is seen by the audience as being lured away onto the train tracks by what we assume is the woman herself. Catching it only a second too late, Arthur rushes to the train tracks to save his son before the train arrives, and just for a moment, the audience believes the two have survived. This is not the case though. Arthur and Joseph reunite with Stella, his deceased wife. At this moment, we realize that the two are in fact dead and did not make it off the train tracks in time. Interestingly, this is an ending that's different from the novel, and for that reason, it's an extraordinarily unexpected death. Number 2, Beth The Descent. One of the most era-defining British films of this century, Neil Marshall's 2005 adventure horror The Descent follows a group of 6 women on their escapades through a series of uncharted cave systems. Knowing the genre and theme of this movie, it's safe to say that character deaths were unavoidable, and we expected them. The particular death that makes its way onto our list is that of Beth. The majority of the other characters meet their grisly end thanks to the creatures of the film, aptly named crawlers. After some of the team are killed by these malformed transformed individuals, we know that the deaths are in full swing. However, assuming that all of the deaths would be caused by the creatures is of course wishful thinking, as midway through the movie, characters Juno, Holly, and Beth are all ambushed by a group of crawlers who savagely rip out Holly's throat. In the ensuing scuffle to try and stop the crawlers from taking Holly's body, a pickaxe-wielding Juno is startled by Beth after savagely killing one of the animals, and subsequently strikes the axe through Beth's throat. Although not immediately killing her, Beth is mortally wounded and knows her time is limited. The entire sequence happens so quickly that we don't really have the chance to stop and register what's happened before it's too late. Beth's death is completely unexpected, but does act as a good setup for the remainder of the plot and the film's final twist. Number 1. Lucy, Martyrs. If anyone asks you what French New Wave extremity horror is, show them Martyrs. It's double points if they can make it the whole way through the movie. Martyrs, original, not the remake, left a lot of audiences with crawling skin by the time the credits rolled. You're not eased into the movie slowly by any means, and within the first 15 minutes you see more blood than you probably would have wanted to by that point. It's a harrowing depiction of torture in many respects, but the opening sequence of Lucy as a young girl escaping her torturers, almost entirely emancipated, really takes the biscuit. Lucy becomes a character that you want to root for, and so her death comes as an unexpected and upsetting turn. Her life has not been an easy one, so you really want to see her go on to combat the trauma she's experienced, but unfortunately that's not the case. After tracking down and murdering the couple that tortured her as a child, along with their children, the hallucinations that she experiences since childhood get devastatingly worse, and this results in her slitting her own throat in front of her best friend. Lucy's suicide was unexpected and genuinely upsetting. Despite her murders being shown in graphic detail, you can't help but sympathize with her actions. The killings that should have brought her peace ultimately didn't, and that's what resulted in her untimely and unfortunately unexpected death.